4 News at 5.
Breaking news, a neighborhood has been evacuated following an oil spill here in central Arkansas. Good evening. Thanks for being with us. I'm Jessica Dean. Bob has the evening off. We are told there has been an oil spill into Lake Conway, and some of that oil, we understand, is leaking into a subdivision in the Mayflower area. That oil is said to be coming from an Exxon pipeline. Now, Faulkner County hazmat teams are on the scene, as well as law enforcement is there as well. KERK4's Drew Petremel is on the phone with us now. And Drew, what do you know? What's the latest in all of this?
Well, we have been able to confirm so far with the Department of Emergency Management that there has been a spill of crude oil leaking into Lake Conway in the city of Mayflower. Now, officials are not able to confirm how much oil has spilled, but they do say that the flow has been cut off.
Now, on our top story, a neighborhood near Lake Conway has been evacuated following an oil spill here in central Arkansas. And we're told that some of that oil could be going into Lake Conway, some of it leaking into that subdivision in Mayflower, and that it is coming from a pipeline owned by Exxon. We're told Faulkner County hazmat teams are on the scene, as are a number of law enforcement, firefighters, a lot of first responders. KERK4's Drew Petremel is live on the scene. And Drew, when we first talked to you, we were just getting there. What do you know now?
Yeah, well, we have been able to confirm that there has been a spill of crude oil. It is an ExxonMobil oil pipeline that has had this spill. Right now here, we are here with Judge Alan Dotson. He is with Faulkner County. We just wanted to ask a little bit about what is going on here. What is it that you can tell us so far?
All right, we've had a release of oil of some type from a pipeline.
A disaster zone in an Arkansas neighborhood following a major oil spill this afternoon. Good evening to you. Thanks for choosing KERK4 News tonight. I'm Jessica Dean. Bob has the night off. Gallon after gallon of crude oil flowing from a ruptured pipeline near Lake Conway today. That's forced several evacuations and an emergency declaration from the Faulkner County judge. KERK4's Drew Petremel is covering this story, has been all afternoon. And Drew, you were there at the beginning, and now as night is upon us, what's the latest?
Well, officials here at the command center still cannot say exactly how much oil leaked out of that pipeline, but the focus now is on a big cleanup effort. Responders rushed to the city of Mayflower just after 3 o'clock this afternoon when officials got word a pipeline carrying crude oil ruptured. In the Northwood subdivision, oil bubbled up into yards, forcing residents to evacuate.
To me, it smelled like burning trash and mixed with gas.
Oh, it's worse in there than it is out here. And the smell out here is fresh, but in there it smells just like straight grease, gas, and all that. It's very terrible. It's potent. Storm drains carried oil to surrounding businesses and under I-40 straight for Lake Conway. Faulkner County Judge Alan Dotson quickly made an emergency declaration allowing help from state agencies. Working together, crews built dams and were able to keep oil out of the lake. But cleanup will be a tall order, and with rain expected this weekend, the clock is ticking.
You know, if we had a deluge, certainly we would worry about that. That's one of the reasons we're strengthening the earthen dams that we've got set up right now.
Estimates say 2,000 barrels of sticky crude oil spewed from a broken pipeline in Mayflower before it was finally plugged, and today it was still flowing through a creek off Highway 365. Attending a community meeting this afternoon at Mayflower High School were residents evacuated from 22 homes in the Northwood subdivision where oil bubbled up in yards.
We didn't ask to be put out of our home, and we can't even get upfront calls to take our hotel or anything like that. They're offering reimbursement.
ExxonMobil, which owns the pipeline, says 100 company employees are working cleanup alongside local, state, and federal employees. 15 vacuum trucks have been deployed to the scene, along with 2,000 feet of boom to protect Lake Conway. I want to give you a little idea of what crews are dealing with out here. Small creeks like this one, blanketed with gooey, black, tarry crude oil, and the smell is enough to almost make you sick.
Wildlife groups are now rushing to save animals covered in oil from an oil spill in Mayflower. The first victim right there arrived at the Arkansas Hawk Center today. So far, we're told this duck has had 3 baths and may need more. Well, the executive director says the oil is incredibly dangerous for birds. It causes painful chemical burns, and it can kill them if they ingest too much just trying to clean themselves off.
You are now getting a bird's eye view this evening of the mess from Friday's oil spill. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight at 6. I'm Bob Clausen. Jessica has the evening off. The third full day of oil cleanup continues and containment efforts underway in Faulkner County. KRK getting a first-hand look at the large-scale impact there. We have team coverage for you tonight and the latest in this spill. Drew Petromo is live in Mayflower. We begin, though, with Marcy Manley tonight. And Marcy, our crews are getting an aerial look at this spill for the very first time, seeing its expanse in its entirety. Marcy?
That's right, Bob. Photojournalist Adam Randall heading up in a helicopter to bring us these images, and he has plenty of information on the sights, sounds, and smells surrounding Lake Conway and the Mayflower subdivision, which is still under evacuation.
It was one of the worst smells I've smelled. The smell is so overwhelming that I could only imagine what it's like for the residents down in that area.
The stench of oil hits photojournalist Adam Randall before he sees it from his sky-high viewpoint over an ExxonMobil pipeline rupture.
Up in the air, it was bad enough to where if we were there any longer, we're talking like a headache.
Well, there's obviously still a lot of work to be done, but I can tell you we were out here 3 days ago. The smell was a lot worse, and pictures from inside the neighborhood were as well. Take a look at some video we shot just a little bit ago. That is showing some Exxon contractors pressure washing North Starlight Road here in the Northwood subdivision as they work to remove the sticky black oil that covered much of the neighborhood. The yard where those estimated 2,000 barrels of oil spewed from a ruptured pipeline is still off limits to anyone not wearing protective gear. As for what caused the pipeline to rupture, that remains under investigation, but ExxonMobil says a 2010 inspection of the pipeline produced no red flags. Today, White House spokesman Jay Carney was asked about the situation.
In this case, the responsible party is ExxonMobil. We obviously take the safety of our many pipelines in this country very seriously, and we have an agency that is dedicated to the task of making sure that those pipelines operate safely, and in cases like these that investigations are undertaken and steps taken to both mitigate the damage and hopefully avoid them in the future.
Yeah, well, even at this late hour, crews still working to suck oil out of a riverbed that is here in Mayflower, also over in the subdivision where the pipeline first ruptured. Crews were hard at work there today trying to restore some normalcy to that neighborhood.
It was under this yard in the Northwood subdivision that a 20-inch pipeline burst open, spilling tens of thousands of gallons of heavy crude oil. Today, Exxon contractors pressure washing the street, working to clean away the sticky tar.
Chris Harrell can't take us back to his house in the oil spill area. He says the smell is awful. These are pictures he took of the spill behind his home in the Northwood subdivision. More than an inconvenience and hassle, a health and safety concern.
Will houses be condemned? What happens to my property values in 3 to 5 years?
ExxonMobil calls the line the Pegasus. According to Bloomberg News, it can transport 96,000 barrels of oil a day. That's more than 3 times the amount it was able to move just a few years ago. Its capacity was increased from 30,000 in 2009. It reportedly carries tar sands oil. It's not like the oil you buy in a store and pour out of a can. Environmental groups call that the dirtiest oil on Earth. Take a look at this map showing the scope of the spill that is forcing people in this neighborhood to stay away from their homes again this evening. Here's where we stand tonight. A plan is being developed that will allow the homeowners affected by this spill, which is now measured between 3,500 and 5,000 barrels. That includes a replacement of soil impacted by the soil as well. Crews on the scene say, despite rumors otherwise, Lake Conway has not been impacted. The Environmental Protection Agency is continuously monitoring air quality in the Mayflower area. And tonight, those homeowners sharing their frustrations with Exxon. KRK4's Drew Petromo joining us now live at Mayflower with more on this. And Drew, you have been standing by this location back and forth all week long. What's the latest tonight now that Exxon and these homeowners have come together?
Okay, what's going on? We have oil everywhere.
Exxon representatives say it's not yet safe enough for homeowners to return to the area, but the company is pleased with the progress being made. Exxon says this is considered a significant event.
The flow of oil has stopped. Lawsuits now begin, albeit a trickle at this point, coming out of a Mayflower neighborhood. Good evening, and thank you for choosing KRK4 News at 10. Everybody, I'm Bob Clausen. Jessica has the evening off. In that lawsuit filed today, residents claim the pipeline was not maintained and the break diminished value of property all along the pipeline. The suit seeks more than $5 million in damages. And tonight, attorneys hosting a meeting with Mayflower residents to answer questions and provide information from property damage to health effects and how litigation would move forward.
Bob, according to one woman we talked with, heavy machinery has been moved in, but little information is being doled out to keep those living there informed. This woman inviting us on her private property after we were met by police who told us we couldn't be there.
Like we weren't considered at all. You know, this house is sitting right next to it. We should have been told something.
Excavation machinery, pavers, and Exxon officios suddenly arrive at Snug Circle.
They didn't say anything to us.
With no notification for folks living here like Jennifer Jarrell, who has a 4-month-old at home.
I didn't think that there would be a lot of problems back here.
Police officers telling us the entire area from the road to the woods, including Jennifer's home, a place we weren't allowed.
The people have a right to talk. I mean, we are in America still, last time I checked.
Exxon officials tell us this is the site of the pipeline rupture, which will require excavation and pumping out excess oil over the coming days to make repairs.
Nobody said anything. Should we evacuate? Should we take precautions?
Cones now line Jennifer's driveway and a new sign posted to warn of a petroleum pipeline, which she's smelled for the past week.
The smell was putrid, just awful. And with little man here, I don't want the doors open even until probably yesterday.
March 29th, the Pegasus pipeline burst, spilling thousands of gallons of crude oil into a small neighborhood. Over 2 months later, new allegations tonight against oil giant ExxonMobil and its handling of the costly oil spill at Mayflower. Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight, everybody. I'm Bob Clausen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Dean. Attorney General Dustin McDaniel and the U.S. Attorney jointly filing a lawsuit against ExxonMobil today, claiming several violations of both state and federal guidelines. KRK4's David Goins live at the federal courthouse where details of those allegations coming out today. David.
Well, Jessica, many of those allegations in the complaint don't deal directly with what happened on March 29th with that oil spill. Instead, how ExxonMobil handled some of that waste in that contaminated neighborhood in Mayflower.
ExxonMobil will have to pay nearly $3 million in fines after federal regulators found several violations related to the Mayflower oil spill.
If you can believe it, it has now been more than 7 months since an ExxonMobil pipeline ruptured in Mayflower, Arkansas. We were all there covering it. The devastating 200,000-gallon spill continues to impact the area and the people who call it home.
A similar story unfolded in July of 2010. That's when an oil pipeline leaked more than 800,000 gallons of oil into the town of Marshall, Michigan. And in both cases, the oil was from heavy crude from Canada. And as residents are wondering here about what the long-term effects of this spill will be, we wanted to send KRK's Drew Petrimo to Michigan to investigate how the spill is affecting life there 3.5 years later.
Just the abundance of wildlife right here was incredible, you know.
From the patio in back of his home, Pat O'Connor gazes out at the Kalamazoo River, a view any Arkansan could surely appreciate. O'Connor says it was once his little slice of Michigan heaven.
Trap it, hunt, fish it. And, you know, that all came to a close pretty much.
O'Connor says the place he'd grown to love changed forever on July 26, 2010. That day, he got a phone call from his father.
He says, well, the geese are black. And I said, the geese are black? What is that, a code word for something?
Nearly 1 million gallons of oil had spilled from a pipeline carrying heavy crude from the Alberta region of Canada to oil refineries in Detroit and elsewhere. Oil flowed through a small creek into the Kalamazoo River.
This is the Kalamazoo River about 30 miles from where the spill happened. At first glance, it appears everything is back to normal. But if you look closer at some of these pools that have collected on the side of the river, you can see that oily sheen across the top of the water.
3.5 years later, they're still cleaning up. When we were there in late September, Enbridge, owner of the ruptured pipeline, was in the middle of a $175 million dredging project ordered by the U.S. EPA after the agency determined oil left behind after initial cleanup efforts was a risk to the environment.
I had everything right here, man. Get my spotting scope out and we just check everything out, you know. Always kept binoculars on hand. Well, we got these big pipes to look at.
Scientists say there is little known about how oil spills affect plant and animal life cycles long term in a water body like the Kalamazoo, or for that matter, areas of Lake Conway, where oil flowed during the Mayflower spill. The closest comparisons come from the aftermath of the Exxon Valdez spill 24 years ago in Alaska, where scientists have found long-lasting impacts on everything from salmon eggs to killer whales. As we toured the Kalamazoo with Enbridge representatives, they pointed out the life that's returned and downplayed the potential for long-term impacts.
There's been a tremendous amount of work put into cleanup efforts.
Only time and further study after the completion of the dredging project will determine the full impact of the spill on the ecosystem. What was crystal clear during our trip to Michigan, the oil spill is still impacting life. Dredging operations are expected to continue through the end of the year. Rows of for sale signs line the street in affected neighborhoods, and various lawsuits are still playing out in court. As we left Pat O'Connor and his backyard oasis blighted by dredge pipes, we asked if he had any advice from one oil spill victim to others back home.
You're on your own. Yep. Go find a lawyer. Good luck.
New at 10, Drew looks into how the spill in Michigan is impacting people's health.
When we visited Michigan in late September, Enbridge, owner of the ruptured pipeline, was dredging the Kalamazoo River, the $175 million project ordered after the U.S. EPA determined remaining oil was a threat to the environment. But for folks in Michigan, the worries don't end with potential harm to Mother Nature.
We've had several in our community that have, at the age of 50-ish, been diagnosed with terminal cancer and died within a couple of months.
Deb Miller became an activist after seeing the effect she says the spill was having on her community.
It was just so scary.
The spill struck close to home. Her family's carpet business sat on the shores of the Kalamazoo.
We have since sold that property because we believe it to be contaminated.
James Rutherford runs the Calhoun County Health Department. So far, he says he has not received evidence from local physicians that the health effects Miller speaks of can be traced back to the oil spill. He's called for a long-term health study to look at the possibility, but so far his requests have been shot down.
It's really difficult to ascertain what's going to happen 25 years from now as a result of any exposure to this.
For its part, Enbridge has stuck with a line familiar to people in Mayflower. The company says testing has shown levels of toxins from the spill to be below the threshold known to cause lasting health problems in people.
There are no long-term health impacts here in Michigan or on the Kalamazoo River, that we have seen.
That's similar to what ExxonMobil has been saying in Mayflower since its oil pipeline ruptured March 29th, spilling an estimated 210,000 gallons, about a fourth the size of the Michigan spill. In both cases, the government has agreed that people are not at risk long-term according to the best available science. And in both cases, some people,
yeah, that's terrible,
like Pat O'Connor, whose home sits on the Kalamazoo, have disagreed.
Nobody knows what it did to you long-term, short-term. Obviously, short-term, a lot of people were nausea and eyes are watering, rashes, skin rashes. A lot of people got skin rashes. I did a bit too.
What was crystal clear during our trip to Michigan is 3.5 years later, residents are still feeling the impact of the oil spill. Dredging operations are expected to continue through the end of the year. For sale signs dot neighborhoods, and various lawsuits are still playing out in court.
It's incredible. Our community has changed forever. It truly has.
Drew Petrimo reporting there. You saw crews dredging the river. The EPA has given Enbridge a December 31st deadline to get rid of the rest of that submerged oil from the Kalamazoo River. But the latest reporting shows that likely won't happen, meaning the cleanup there will continue into 2014.